Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. I'm a general physician. I'm not an endocrinologist. Yes, today we'll be talking on insulin, how you use it, when to use it, what are the doses, which regime you will select, etc. We'll be talking on insulin. So, insulin and regime which are being utilized while utilizing insulins. So, we'll be talking on that. Now you know very well my speech may not be like these two famous people as well as this famous person, but I try to make my speech as much as interesting as possible because this is a very interesting topic and you will come across good number of patients with diabetes and you will require insulin and how to use it, etc. I'll talk the facts, not like these people who talks but there are no facts. We'll be talking on a clinical evidence, what we call as evidence-based medicine. So whenever you start insulin, insulin is a deadly weapon. At the same time, it is a life-saving. Yes, 100% it cannot give you a cure. But at the same time, while using insulin, we should not get hypoglycemia. Insulin can control diabetes mellitus and give you a good life, good quality of life. But at the same time, no hypoglycemia, no weight gain, and cost should be relatively affordable to any person. So there is a risk, there is a benefit. Benefit is only one, control. And on the opposite side, hypoglycemia, weight gain, and cost factor, economy we call. Those are the risk factors. But you have to always look at risk benefit ratio. If benefit is more than risk, it becomes indication. And if risk is more than the benefit, it becomes a contraindication. So you have to think over whenever you start insulin. This is one almost in majority of all CME. This particular is shown. This shows you that even at the many years before this, in an Egyptian mummy, you can see that was amputation which has been done, and this was artificial toe which was made of a wood and leather. So it was a prosthetic artificial grade toe which was being utilized. Person should not end up with this. Now we'll be starting with introduction, action, types of insulin, different methods, side effects, etc. And then we'll talk of indication, contraindication, selection of insulin, which regime to use, which insulin to use, what dose, when to give, monitoring, and our maintenance of a goal, and it should be added with monitoring. So all these things we'll be talking in little more detail. These are the two famous people who identified insulin which was secreted from pancreas. That was Banting and Best. These were the two people. And then that insulin was being identified and it was being used on a person. And this was the first person in whom the insulin was, it was a type 1 diabetes mellitus. So after treatment, you can see the change. Same way, this was the person before and this is after treatment with insulin, type 1 diabetes mellitus. So this is how the insulin is working. Now we know very well the insulin is synthesized in beta cell of pancreas and it is manufactured having a A chain, B chain and C chain. So there are A chain, B chain and C chain. So we have got pre-proinsulin which will be converted into proinsulin and then finally converted into insulin. And we have got different types of cells in pancreas which secretes different materials. So there is alpha cell, beta cell, delta cell. alpha cell secretes glucagon, beta cell secretes insulin, while delta cell secretes somatostatin. And there are other cells also which are secreting some other material which is of some importance. Beta cell will secrete insulin, alpha cell will secrete glucagon, delta cell will secrete somatostatin. So in beta cell you will have a pre-proinsulin which will be converted into proinsulin and finally converted into what we call as a insulin. So in a beta cell we have got alpha cell which is accounting for 20% of the islet cells which will secrete glucagon and pro-glucagon. Beta cell will secrete insulin, and while converting pre-pro into pro and from pro into insulin, it will release C peptides. As well as beta cell also secretes amylin which is having identical action like insulin. Then delta cell which is accounting for only 3 to 5%, beta cell is 75% of the islet cell mass. So this delta cell secretes somatostatin. G cell is only 1% which secretes gastrin. And there are some cells which are called as F cells, or they are called P cells which secrete pancreatic polypeptides. These are the different types of cells. We do not talk much about of gastrin, polypeptides, somatostatin, etc. Those are not very commonly uttered during hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, or we call glucose metabolism. But they play some role in glucose metabolism. So whenever a person takes a food, after digestion, it goes to the small intestine, it comes to the ileum part and colon, GLP-1 is released. That GLP-1 will be acting on pancreas and it will stimulate beta cell to release insulin, and it will inhibit alpha cell to decrease glucagon production. At the same time, that GLP-1 will be acting on the stomach and will decrease the stomach emptying, though it will slow down the gastric peristalsis and will decrease the emptying time, will increase the emptying time. Hence, there will be slowdown in the gastric emptying. At the same time, it will stimulate the brain and it will produce what we call a satiety, and person will feel that his appetite is being fulfilled. So this is the action of what we call as incretins, which is secreted from L cells of ileum and colon. As soon as the glucose is being absorbed, that will enter into the beta cell, and once it enters into the beta cell, it will be undergoing the metabolic pathway in a mitochondria and ribosomes. It will generate ATP molecules, energy, and which will produce depolarization. And secondary to depolarization, calcium channel will be activated, and that calcium channel will now stimulate insulin which is being stored in beta cells will be released. This is a simplified diagram. This is little complicated diagram. So glucose enters, it will be acting via glucose 6 phosphokinase pathway. That will be a Krebs cycle, and this will be a mitochondria in which ATP and ADP molecules are manufactured, which will trigger the potassium, and that potassium will produce a depolarization wave which will stimulate the calcium channel. Calcium will enter inside, and that calcium will stimulate the release of insulin from the pool. So initially you will have that, this is called first phase, followed by a second phase we call amplifying pathway, and that amplifying pathway is by all this different mechanism. We don't go into detail. So this is the mechanism by which the beta cell will now release insulin. At the same time, GLP-1 will inhibit alpha cell to release glucagon. So glucagon will not be released into bloodstream. So there is a constant release of an insulin all throughout the day to maintain a particular level of glucose we call as a background blood sugar, basic blood sugar. So that is being maintained because of a constant secretion of insulin from pancreas beta cells. When we take a meal, breakfast, lunch and dinner, at that time as soon as the breakfast is started, glucose level starts increasing. That will stimulate pancreas to secrete beta cell to secrete mealtime insulin. So we will have three spikes during breakfast, during lunch, during dinner. So we have got a basal secretion of insulin plus mealtime insulin. So this will be the two methods in which the insulin is produced from beta cell. There is a constant production of a insulin from beta cell we call as a basal production of insulin, and along with the meal we call mealtime insulin production. You have to understand so that you will be able to decide regarding how you give the insulin. So to maintain this basal insulin level, you will give a basal insulin, and to control this mealtime sugar, you will give mealtime insulin. Mealtime insulin we call bolus. So this is the blood sugar level, and these are the secretions of insulin in a normal person. Once the insulin is secreted, insulin has to act on a different cells. As far as action on a different cell is concerned, insulin act like a key. So it will fit with the receptor, that is keyhole, and it will activate the entry of glucose into the cell. And this is how it is going to work. So for insulin to have action, you need a receptor. In a person with type 1 diabetes mellitus, either the receptors are defective or the number of receptors are less. Hence, insulin cannot act, or the insulin production itself has become tremendously less, so that glucose cannot enter into the cell. And that is the basic mechanism. So there are different receptors which are being there: GLUT1, GLUT2, GLUT3, GLUT4, GLUT5. These receptors are present on different tissue. GLUT1 is almost present in all tissue except red cell and brain, while GLUT2 is present in a beta cell of pancreas, liver, kidney and gut. So this is mainly present in GI tract. GLUT3 is present in brain, kidney, placenta, other tissue. GLUT4 is mainly present in muscle and adipose tissue. So glucose to enter in muscle and adipose tissue, you will need GLUT4 receptors, while gut and kidney will have GLUT5. So some tissue, say kidney, is having 2, 3 and 5, as well as 1 also. So all this receptor will be working with insulin, and what they do, these are the function. So basal uptake of glucose will be increased. Transport across the blood-brain barrier is also being done because of a GUT1. So GUT1 will be present in brain, and also you have got GUT3 which will be present in brain. So it will help to utilize glucose. But GUT4 is not present in brain. It is only present in muscle and adipose tissue. So insulin mediated uptake of glucose in muscle and adipose tissue will be done by GUT4 receptor. So these are all the different receptors which are being present in different tissue. So once the insulin starts acting at the level of GUT4, so glucose will enter, and that will be metabolized by mitochondria, and you will have a generation of an ATP molecule. And that will also have simultaneously effect, that insulin will also have an effect on glucose transport via receptor, as well as protein synthesis, lipid synthesis, glycogen synthesis, and even growth and gene expression. So these are the different actions of insulin. We'll be talking in detail as we pass by. So it has got main effect on 3 tissue: liver, muscle and adipose tissue. In adipose tissue, it increases the glucose uptake, it gives rise to lipogenesis, and it decreases lipolysis. While on muscle, it increases the glucose uptake, glycogen synthesis, and it also produces what we call as a protein manufactures. In liver, it decreases gluconeogenesis, it increases glycogen synthesis, hence glucose will be converted into glycogen. There will be no more glucose generation from protein and amino acids, that is amino acids, or from free fatty acids. Hence, glucose is not generated. So glucose level will become less, and there is a lipogenesis. So because of all this, glucose is converted into glycogen, and there is no longer glucose production from fat and protein, and this will help in reduction of glucose level. At the same time, there is no release of glucose from liver. These are the main action. So muscle, liver, and adipose tissue. These are the main three structures where the insulin will be acting. There are many other structures. So insulin will be acting on a muscle where glucose uptake and glycogen synthesis is increased. On fat tissue, glucose uptake, glycerol production, triglyceride breakdown is reduced, triglyceride synthesis is increased, hence fat tissue deposition is increased. In liver, glucose uptake, glycogen synthesis, free fatty acid synthesis, and glucose synthesis is reduced. Neoglucogenesis is reduced. And on a brain, usually insulin will have almost no effect, and there is a feedback mechanism what will be taking part. In most of the cell, it increases the protein synthesis. Hence, there is a decrease in amino acid. As far as triglyceride breakdown is reduced and triglyceride synthesis is increased. So, triglyceride level in the blood is reduced. This will increase in adipose tissue, not in blood. So, triglyceride level in blood will be reduced. And in liver, what it will result into? In liver, it will result into increased glycogen and increased fat deposition. While in case of muscle, as glucose is utilized, there will be blood sugar level will reduce. These are all the effect of insulin, what will be taking place on muscle, adipose tissue and liver. These are the main three organs where it is acting, as well as it is acting on all the cells for protein synthesis. So it is an anabolic hormone. To summarize all those, it will increase glucose uptake. These are all positive effects. Glucose uptake is increased in muscle and adipose tissue, so glucose will enter into muscle and fat cells and produce energy for those tissue. It will produce glycolysis, glycogen synthesis. So glycogen deposits in the liver will increase. Protein synthesis will increase in almost all cells, as well as potassium will be shifted from extracellular into intracellular compartment. So potassium level will also decrease, and this can be utilized for treatment of hyperkalemia, one of the treatment. So insulin with glucose can be one of the treatment we call as a glucose plus insulin drip for treatment of hyperkalemia. While it will stop proteolysis, protein breakdown is reduced, ketogenesis is reduced, lipid lysis is reduced, lipolysis is reduced, glycogen breakdown is reduced, and neoglucogenesis is also reduced. So because of all this, amino acid level will be reduced, ketone levels will be reduced, free fatty acid level will be reduced, and glucose levels are reduced, and glycogen level in liver will be increased, and protein level will in all tissue will be increased. This is a combined action of insulin. As far as glucose homeostasis is concerned, I will convert this into a very simple way. If normal glucose is being maintained, normal secretion of insulin will be there, normal secretion of glucagon will be there, depending upon the blood sugar level. Now, if the blood sugar level falls, say person has not taken food for a very long period, because of low blood sugar level, it gives a stimulus to the beta cells to inhibit insulin, and it will stimulate alpha cell to secrete glucagon. So glucagon will be released, insulin will be inhibited. So glucagon will now stimulate liver to break down glycogen and produce glucose. So liver will start pouring out glucose because of breakdown from glycogen. So glucagon will now stimulate the liver to decrease glycogen level in liver by breakdown, and it will release glucose and it will bring back the glucose level. Opposite thing will happen for insulin secretion. If the glucose level increases, insulin secretion increases, and we have already mentioned the action of insulin. So by those multiple action on fat, muscles and liver, it will reduce the blood glucose level. Now that's why insulin is one hormone which will help all cells to utilize glucose. So it is like our honorable Prime Minister. As well as there is one hormone which is helping insulin, that is GLP-1 analogs. GLP-1, or we call incretins. And incretins, there are two hormones, glucagon like peptide and GIP. So these two are the incretins. So this is like an incretin helping insulin. While these are all the against insulin. Glucagon is against insulin, growth hormone, cortisol, epinephrine, thyroid hormone. All these hormones will increase the glucose level, while insulin helps cell to utilize glucose and decreases the glucose level in blood. So this all hormone, this is only one hormone which is working and helping the cell. These are all the hormone which is increasing the glucose level. So these are all together becoming an enemy of these persons. These are all the factors which increases the insulin secretion. Increase blood glucose level, increase free fatty acid level, increase amino acid level. We call as a gastrointestinal hormones like gastrin, cholecystokinin, secretin, gastric inhibitory polypeptides, etc. Also glucagon, growth hormone, cortisol, these are all enemy. Parasympathetic stimulation like acetylcholine, beta adrenergic stimulations, insulin resistance like obesity will also give rise to increased insulin production, and then that stage we call as a hyperinsulinemia. Sulfonylurea will also stimulate the beta cell to produce more and more insulin hormone, and later on it will result into what we call as a beta cell exhaustion. Well, there are very few conditions which will decrease the insulin production, and that is decreased blood glucose level. It will inhibit insulin production from beta cells, prolonged fasting. Somatostatin will also reduce the insulin production, and any alpha adrenergic activity and leptins, that is the hormone secreted from fat cells, all this will decrease the insulin production. So these things decreases insulin level, and these are the factors which will increase the insulin level. So in all these factors, some are protective, some are not useful action. Well, this, because of decrease in insulin secretion during hypoglycemia, it is a beneficial effect. So you have to keep this thing in mind. So whatever insulin is secreted in a normal person, physiological insulin secretion suppresses the hepatic glucose production, and it facilitates the peripheral tissue to uptake glucose, and it suppresses lipolysis, lipogenesis, and also it increases protein synthesis. And this insulin will be constantly secreted by pancreas. So from pancreas the insulin is acting, and that will be metabolized by liver, and also it is metabolized and thrown out by kidney. While if you give an exogenous insulin, this exogenous insulin is given in a subcutaneous tissue. It will have direct effect on adipose and muscle tissue. It will also give a signal to the brain, and while giving a signal to the brain, it will help to have an action of insulin. As there is an external insulin which is being given, now pancreas no longer produces extra amount of insulin, so pancreas is at rest. So beta cell exhaustion is reduced, and beta cell will undergo growth, and there is a low portal insulin. So portal insulin while passing through liver is less, hence there is less insulin which is metabolized. All this subcutaneous tissue insulin will be directly acting on the liver. Well, if you look in this particular, whatever insulin is produced by pancreas has to pass through liver, and liver will metabolize insulin immediately. So amount of insulin available for peripheral action is relatively less. Hence, whenever you give an external insulin, it is having a direct action, and this we call as over insulinization. 50% of the insulin is removed in a single passage through a liver. So if insulin, endogenous insulin is there, 60% is already cleared in a single passage. So whatever is secreted from pancreas goes to the portal circulation. While going through the liver, 60% is already removed. 30% will be removed by what we call as kidney. While in case of exogenous, in liver, only 30 to 40% is removed in the first circulation and 60% is thrown out by kidney. So insulin will have a longer action when you give subcutaneously in a person for treatment of diabetes mellitus. Whatever insulin is secreted in an endogenous, the half-life is 3 to 5 minutes only. So it is very short action. So the action do not last for more than 2 to 3 hours. So basal value of insulin is 5 to 15 units, and during meal time you see the peak value. So during meal time the insulin secretion can go up to 90 unit. So maximum secretion is during a meal time. So during breakfast, lunch and dinner the secretion becomes more, and the insulin is destroyed by a specific protease enzyme, and there is another enzyme called insulinase, that is glutathione insulin transhydrogenase. So this is an enzyme which will destroy the insulin and will convert into a non-insulin products. In type 1, because of lack of insulin, there is an increased catabolism, decreased anabolism, and there is an increased secretion of glucagon, cortisol, growth hormone and catecholamine. So because of increased catabolism, the glucose is being utilized by a ketone pathways, and you get a production of a ketone bodies, or we call ketones, and that will produce diabetic ketoacidosis. As well as because of decreased anabolism, hyperglycemia will produce fatigue, glycosuria will produce genital infection, osmotic diuresis will produce polyuria and polydipsia. Because of salt and water depletion, the person will have a tachycardia and hypotension. And there is an increased glycogenolysis. Because of that increased glycogenolysis and increased gluconeogenesis, there is wasting of muscle, increased lipolysis, so there is a loss of weight. So muscle wasting, loss of weight, etc. takes place. There is a ketone production because of an abnormal ketone pathways utilization of glucose, and because of that acidosis, ketone acids. So there is a hyperventilation, peripheral vasodilatation. So that also adds to the hypotension and hypothermia. And this is the entire effect what we come across in a type 1, and type 1 are more prone to diabetic ketoacidosis. And that is because of insulin deficiency. Now, insulin analogs, because when you give a routine insulin, that is acting for a very short period, while insulin analogs, usually when it is given, they are hexamer. That hexamer, multi-hexamer is converted into dihexamer. Dihexamer is converted into hexamer. Hexamer is converted into dimer, and dimer is finally converted into monomer. And that monomer now will circulate in the blood, and that will go and act on an insulin receptor and will produce an effect. Hence, these are longer acting insulins. So for conversion from this to this takes a very long period. That's why see this long acting insulin. So from here, this product to convert into monomer, it takes a very long time. While a rapid acting insulin, as soon as it is given, it is converted very fast into monomer and it will act. So if you want a rapid action, you will have to use a short acting insulin, and you want to have a long acting action, you will have to use a long acting insulin analogs. So degludec is one example. The degludec is present in a degludec dihexamer, which will be converted into degludec multihexamer. Then it will be converted into monomer, and then that monomer will be converted into insulin, that will be converted into insulin monomer, and then that will be acting. And this is how it is. When it is given, it is in this type, then it is converted into this material, then multihexamer, monohexamer, then monohexamer will be converted into monomer, and this monomer will now enter into the bloodstream, and then it will be acting at the insulin receptor and producing the action of insulin, and it is the longest acting insulin. And you can see that from 1922 up to this level, almost there were hardly any other insulin which were being manufactured. Now you have got lot of different types of insulin coming, and 2015 was the last, which was degludec, which was introduced in market. So we'll be talking of different types of and varieties of insulin. What is the ideal basal insulin to should be? It should be clinically beneficial, longer acting, flat time action, and less day-to-day variability. If all these four criteria are fulfilled, it is the best basal insulin. So it should give a clinical benefit. It should be very long acting. It should have less chance of hypoglycemia, and there should be no variability. We call no hypoglycemia, no hyperglycemia. So glucose variability should be minimum, and that is the ideal basal insulin. There are a lot of insulin which has come from now at present. After 2017, we have got a rapid acting insulin, intermediate acting insulin, long acting insulin, pre-mix insulin, and we have got basal with combination with others. Rapid acting can be regular, Lispro, Aspart, Glulicin. Intermediate, what is we call NPH. Long acting is Glargine, Detimer, and Degludec. Premix is a combination of intermediate acting and short acting insulin, that is NPH with regular. Or you have got Aspart mixture, Aspart mixed with long acting insulin, that is Aspart mix 70-30. In a premix, you can have a 70-30 combination, or 70-25, or 50-50 combination. And in a premix variety, we have got an NPH, we have got an Aspart mix, Lispro, Rhizodec, etc. In a Rhizodec, you have got a mixture of Degludec with Aspart. So these are the permutation combination in a premix. While we call as a combo preparations, basal insulin is mixed with, one of these basal insulin is mixed with GLP receptor agonist, and that is a fixed dose combination, like Degludec is combined with liraglutides, etc. So these are the different types of insulin. In 1986, we are only human, regular insulin, and NPH. Now we have got a big list of different varieties of insulins. Now we have got pens which are available ready-made, so it is very easy to take insulins. We have got smart pens in which you can calculate how much insulin to be given. You have got syringes which are usually utilized by the person who is not well educated person. And in syringes also we have got a 40 unit per ml and 100 unit per ml. They are trying to find out the ways and means of providing insulin in an oral preparation, yet not successful. Rectal suppository also they are trying, but not successful. Inhalers are there. There are different types of inhalers like Exubra and Bifreza. You have got a transdermal patch which are available, which we also call as a smart insulins. Now they are very much in market, but they are costly. Artificial pancreas is available, which is consisting of a biopancreas as well as artificial pancreas, which is containing two chambers. One chamber is containing glucagon, one chamber is containing insulin. We call as a bionic pancreas. We have got an ocular preparation. They are trying to manufacture, so insulin can be given by the means of eye drops, etc. So now insulin analogs are very beneficial because they are having a better safety profile, more dosage flexibility, less weight gains, and person has got improved adherence to the treatment because there are relatively less number of pricks, and it improves the glycemic control. It also decreases the glycemic variability, and these are different names given to those insulin analogs. They are called insulin designer insulin, insulin receptor ligands, democratic insulin, and insulin analogs. Now this is the word which is being commonly utilized, insulin analogs. And these are all the different types of preparations which are available. You can have 100 unit per ml, 200 unit, and even now 300 units are also available. And as the concentration becomes more, subcutaneous depot quantity is less, because if you want to give more than 100 unit and if you use 300 unit per ml, the amount of insulin injection will be less. So the quantity of insulin will be same, but the amount of solution what you are injecting will be relatively less. So there are different types of preparations which are available. This is a combination of degludec with aspart. So we divide into what we call is a bolus insulin, or we call rapid acting insulin or bolus insulin, which can be given subcutaneous or IV. We have got a, or also called as a mealtime insulin or prandial insulin. Mealtime insulin or prandial insulin, or called bolus, or we call rapid acting insulin. And these are divided into two: regular insulin analogs. Regular insulin is Humulin R or Actaprid, or this particular Insujet R or Dongulisile. So these are the different. The most common utilized is Actaprid, which is most commonly utilized, and another is Humulin R. These are the two common which are being utilized. As far as analog is concerned, these are costly. That is Lispro, Novorapid, Aspart is now available as Fiasp, and this is ultra short acting. And there is a Epidra, which is Glulucin. These are the four products which are available: Lispro, Novorapid, Aspart, and Glulucin, Epidra. These are all we call as a bolus preparation. These are human analogs as a bolus. These are human regular insulin. These are all synthetic insulin only, but they are not human analogs, and they are rapidly acting, so we call them as bolus. So bolus insulin has to be given with each meal or whenever you take a snacks. They are trying and they are successful. 500 unit in 1 ml is also available. You got 200 unit available. 500 unit has been used successfully in patient with obesity, immune mediated insulin resistance, and genetic abnormality of insulin receptor. So these are the newer insulins which are available. You've got a rapid acting insulin which is having a better match. They have fast onset of action and short duration, hence chances of hypoglycemia is almost negligible. So less hypoglycemia, and that's why the rapid acting insulin should be the preference of choice during mealtime. While basal insulins are divided into a long acting insulin we call as, which are given at dinner or breakfast. They have to given, they cannot be given as IV. Never give them in a IV preparation. They are to be utilized only in a subcutaneous, and these are called intermediate acting insulin or longer acting insulin. They can be utilized as a basal, but the action is not more than 24 hours. Hence, you might require 2 times a dose or 3 times a dose. Hence, they are less preferred. So, they have to be given before dinner or before breakfast. So, by and large, these are the basal insulin not acting for more than 14 to 16 hours. Some are acting for 14 to 16 hours. So, they have to be given 2 times in a day, or sometimes even you might require to give 3 pricks in a day, but by and large minimum 2 pricks in a day. As far as what we call as a human variety is concerned, Humulin and Insulitards and Insujet N. So common utilized is Insulitard, or we call Mixtard, that is Novomixtard. So this is a NPH insulin mixed with a short acting insulin. So that is NPH insulin, Insulitards. And when it is mixed with a short acting, we call it a mixture. We'll be showing you that particular also. While Lantus is a basal analog which is almost acting for 24 hours, but not exactly 24 hours, but close to 24 hours. And Datimer is a Levimer, which is by a Novo company. It is also acting for nearly 24 hours. But Degludec is acting for more than 42 hours. So it is the longest basal insulin, longest acting basal insulin. So benefit for the patient is who needs a higher dose, you might go from 100 units to 300 units. So you can see the amount of depot. So the size of depot will decrease. If I want to give a 300 units to a person, you will require 3 times this size. So this is beneficial. Plus this becomes a very long acting. So the action will be further prolonged. So that is the advantage. But in a premix that is containing a mixture of short acting with long acting, that is either in a 70-30 preparation, 50-50 preparation, or 75-25 preparations. We have got the commonest material which is being utilized is Humulin 70-30 or Mixtard 30, we call 70-30. That is mixture of short acting, that is Actapred with we call Insulita. So this two mixture becomes Mixtard. While in analogs, we have got a Novomix, which is a 30-70 mixture, Humalog, which is a mixture of 25-75, and you have got a Humalogs mixture of 50-50. So these are the pre-mix insulin. Pre-mix insulin will be acting little longer, 16 to 18 hours, but they also do not act for more than 24 hours. Hence, these are also sometimes you require 2 times or 3 times in a day. So these are to be given at dinner or at breakfast, or sometime instead of breakfast you give it at lunch, before lunch. And this pre-mix and long acting insulins ideally should not be given IV, should not be given IV. They have to be given only subcutaneous. So these are called pre-mix insulin. So mixed insulin can be 30-70, 70-30, 25-75 or 50-50, or you have got a mixture of two different compounds, basal insulin with GLP-1 receptor agonist. So these are a mixed insulins. Novomix, Rhizodec, which is a mixture of Degludec with Aspart. This is Aspart protamine with Aspart, while Humulin is a mixture of NPH with short-acting insulin, etc. Lispro is combined with Lispro protamine, that is Lispro mix, and combination can be 30-70 or 25-75 or 50-50, etc. While these are combo preparations, that is preparation of insulin with another compound which is an injectable material we call GLP-1 receptor agonist, that is liraglutide and lixitinide. So these are premix and this is a co-formulation, combo preparation. So according to the ADA guidelines, it is not recommended. These mixed preparations are by and large should not be used for type 1 diabetes mellitus, and particularly in a younger children. Don't try to use mixed insulins. In type 2, if well controlled, continue. Do not mix glargine and Datimer with other insulin because they have got a different pH. So by and large, try to utilize this particular material while selecting an insulin. Biphasic premix insulin analogs usually will give you a better answer. It will help you to control mealtime insulin as well as basal insulin, and that is the advantage. And what we call as a Rhizodec is a base because Degludec is acting for more than 42 hours, and insulin Aspart is a very short acting insulin, so it will cover, it is an ultra long preparations which will be because of Degludec, and because of Aspart it will be ultra short acting, so it will help in controlling meal time, what we call as breakfast, lunch and dinner, depending upon that. So whichever is higher, you give before that particular. So if early morning sample is showing you post breakfast is high, you give Rhizodec before a breakfast. If post lunch is very high, you give this Rhizodec before lunch, and you can decide accordingly. So this is the advantage of Rhizodec, and this is a co-formulation, and co-formulation gives you a combination of basal insulin with GLP-1 receptor agonist. So this will be helping in many other way by increasing route, while basal insulin will be controlling the basal insulin production, and GLP-1 will be helping via incretin action. So that will help to reduce hypoglycemia, reduce weight gain, and GLP-1 will reduce weight. Person will have adherence because it will be a single prick. Self-management is possible, and over-basalization will be reduced. And it will help in controlling HbA1c, fasting as well as postprandial. So this will be the advantage of having a co-formulation preparations. But only drawback is cost factor. It is very, very costly. So degludec with liraglutide is available as Julotopy, Jultopy, and insulin glargine is along with lixisenide is available as Solifia. So it is 100 with 3.3, it is 100 with 33. So this is the type of preparations which are available, and you can utilize this if a person is affording group. These are nasal preparations, or we call as inhaler preparation. We call Exubra and Afrezza. Exubra is available in the form of a bigger material, while Afrezza is a very small instrument. This is Exubra. You can see the size. It is a very big size. Person cannot carry with. All those are different problems. While you can see the size of the Afrezza. This is in a palm. What is the smallest size? So this is more preferred nowadays. And whatever you inhale will be absorbed from the lung. So it will depend upon lot of factors in lung. So if any person who has got a COPD, bronchial asthma, or he has got emphysema, he has got a lower respiratory tract infection, the effect of Exubra or Afrezza will be reduced. Approximately 1 puff will give you 1 milligram puff will give you 2.75 unit of insulin, and 3 milligram puff will give you approximately 8 units. So this has to be remembered. So if you want to give a 8 unit, you will have to give a 3 milligram puff. So depending upon that, you will have to give. Because the absorption is not having a proper curve. So inhaled insulin can be absorbed sometime rapidly, or sometime it is slowly absorbed. So it can give rise to hypoglycemia, and because of hypoglycemia, body weight gain because of increased appetite. Cough can be a common. Lung function, if it is abnormal. In a smoker also, it can affect the absorption. In a non-smoker, the absorption will be improved. Insulin antibody formation takes place, so later on the person develops insulin resistance because of antibody, and long-term safety is not been established, as this is not a common mode of treatment. And here is a chart. If you want to give a 4 units, you give 1 puff. 4 units puff is available, so 1 puff. If you want to give a 8 units, you will have to give a 8 unit puff material. And if you want to give a 12 units, 1 puff from 4 units, 1 puff from 8 units. You want to give 16, 2 puffs from 8 units variety. So these are the different types of Afrezza which are available. So blue color gives you 4 unit per puff, and this is green color giving you 8 unit per puff. And depending upon that, you can give that particular doses. You can go up to 24 also, 3 puffs of 8 units per puff. Now there are other method of giving an insulin is called continuous subcutaneous insulin pump. Now this particular is called short form CSII. So it is conventional subcutaneous insulin pump, which is having a sensor augmented or having an automated closed loop insulin pumps, which you don't require to calculate the dose, because there is a sensor which will make out what is the glucose monitoring. So this will deliver the required quantity of insulin into subcutaneous tissue. So this will contain a sensor, and that will recognize the glucose level and deliver that required quantity of glucose. Also, you have got a smart insulin patch what are available. So this patch are available, and this patch, insulin patch. So when you give that insulin patch will recognize the glucose molecule and will determine the glucose level, and it will deliver a calculated quantity of insulin, and these are called smart insulin. There is what is called as artificial pancreas or bionic pancreas. This bionic pancreas has got two chambers. One chamber contains glucagon and one chamber contains insulin. And there is a continuous glucose monitoring which is going on. If a glucose level goes below 70, insulin release will be stopped and glucagon release may start as soon as the glucose level falls below 70. So this is called bihormonal or bionic pancreas, and these are available, but the cost is very high. So this is bionic pancreas, which is containing CGM sensor. There is a receiver that will have a control algorithm device, and that will be connected to the insulin pump and glucagon pump, and that will deliver the calculated quantity of insulin into subcutaneous tissue. As well as whenever there is a hypoglycemia, insulin delivery will be blocked and glucagon delivery will be stimulated. So there are two separate chambers in this bionic pancreas. So it acts almost like a normal pancreas what we are having in our body. There are other techniques which can be utilized for treatment of diabetes mellitus, that is pancreatic transplant, islet cells transplant, and these are the two common technique very commonly is utilized in a type 1 diabetes mellitus, but yet not successful. And now the best device what is being successful is the artificial pancreas, or we call bionic pancreas. It is very successful. So islet cell transplant, etc. is not a successful, but it is still under a trial. They are trying to find out a newer insulin and insulin combined with albumin. They are under research. Enteral insulin in the form of capsule forms and other varieties are also utilized. They are again under trial, not successful. Even insulin suppositories they have tried. Transdermal insulin patch they have tried. Aerosol they are trying. Buccal absorption they are trying. These are all oralin, it is called as a orally absorbed insulin. Even capsule they have tried. Transdermal insulin they are trying. So sooner or later we might come across some insulin preparations which may not be in an injectable form. So now while selecting, you will have to decide regarding a regular insulin, or we call as a basal insulin or intermediate acting insulin. So you have to know short acting insulin, remember odd figure 135. So its action starts within 1 hour, peak action 3 hours, and by 5 hour action goes away in short acting. While in intermediate acting, action starts little longer, 2 hours, 12 hours and maximum 24 hours. Ideally it is not 24 hours, it is 14 to 16 hours. They do not act for 24 hours. Now this is the main important chart. Just pay attention to this particular chart. So in a Actapred or Humulin, which we call as a short acting insulin, or we also call as a bolus insulin, action will start as soon as you give insulin. Within half an hour to 1 hour, the action will be starting and the peak will receive within 2 hours, and peak will come down to normal after 6 to 8 hours, not longer than 10 hours. So this is the action of Actapred. So after this particular period, the action of insulin is almost zero. While ultra short acting insulin we call, which is novorapid aspart. Novorapid aspart. You can see the action is starting much faster and action disappears within 4 to 6 hours. Hence, the chances of hypoglycemia is much less as compared to actaprid. So, novorapid aspart, now it is also available in the form of what we call as uh, sorry, I forget the name, FIASP, FIASP, uh, fast acting insulin, ultra fast acting insulin. So that particular is, it is an aspart only, but FIASP. So that is ultra fast acting. Even this you can see onset is between 0 to 15, peak is 2 hours and maximum duration is 3 to 5 hours. While here you can see the duration can be 6 to 8 hours. By and large, after 6 hours the action becomes less. So chances of hypoglycemia is there after 6 hours. So after 4 hours of action, you can have a hypoglycemia during this period. While in an intermediate acting, you can see here, the onset is gradual, peak is 4 to 6 hours, here 4 to 6 hours, and duration is 14 to 16 hours. And after that, the action wears off. So after this, this insulin will not have any effect on a meal time. So this has to be given twice in a day. So when you give twice in a day, the chances of hypoglycemia becomes more. And there is always a chance of hypoglycemia if person is not having a meal during this period. So intermediate acting is not a good drug for mealtime insulin. But in a person who does not want to have a more prey, you can have this particular, we'll be talking about that. Then there is what we call as a long acting basal analogs. Those long acting basal analogs has got onset after 2 hours. There is no peak as such. Once the action starts, then the peak is plateau and duration is 18 to 24 hours. By and large, we call glargine and datimel are acting for 18 to 24 hours, not more than 24 hours. So by 24 hours, the action becomes less. But when you give daily, then this becomes plateau. While in a premix, you can see there are two peak. This is one peak, this is second peak. This is by a short acting, this is by a long acting. So this is short acting, this is long acting. So it is a mixture of this and mixture of this. So you got a combination of that. Or you can have a combination of what we call as analogs and premix analogs, that is this and this. So again, this will have an action little longer. This will be controlling meal time and this will help you to control basal. So these are the two preparations which is better than what we call as a long acting insulin, which is intermediate acting insulin. So we have got a short acting insulin, ultra short acting insulins, intermediate acting insulin, basal insulin, or which is we call as the longest acting insulins. And now we have got the longest acting insulin is degludec. We have got a pre-mix preparations which are human preparations, and we have got the analog preparations which are also pre-mix. So these are all the different types of preparations which are available in market, and you will have to decide depending upon individual person which will be best for him, depending upon his habits of eating habits, what work he is doing, how much amount of exercise he is doing, etc. So try to remember this action potential. So these are the aspart action. This is regular insulin action. This is NPH action. This is ultra lente insulin action, which is further longer acting. Now you can see this is the action of glargine, or we call degludec. Degludec is acting longer, further. I can say this is more than 42 hours, while glargine is close to 24 hours. And datimel is 18 hours. So glargine is better than datimel and degludec is better than glargine. So at present degludec is the best, which is acting for 42 hours. And as far as short acting insulin is concerned, aspart is best, which is ultra short acting. So try to utilize this and this. So this is a degludec action. So you can see this. Once you give a prick, and when second prick comes, by that time you will have a plateau set up within few days. So Datimer, Glargine, little short acting, while Degludec, it is a very long acting insulin. And then there is available, we call as a Peglispro. We are not going to talk in detail regarding all those. And this is the action what we have already shown you. But you can just see, instead of 100 unit, if you use 300 unit, the duration becomes little longer as compared to 24 hours in Glargine. So if you use Glargine, which is called Toujeo, so if you use 300 units, the dose remains same, but the action, duration of action will become longer. So that is an advantage of 200 and 300 units preparations. So you can see here, the 100 unit preparations will have an action, degludec action will be further prolonged when you use 200 units, or you can go in Glargine from 100 to 300 unit, it will become more than 30 hours. So this will be an additional advantage of using 100 unit and 300 units. And 500 unit, you can see the duration of action. In a regular insulin, it can go up to 24 hours. So these are slowly the preparation which are coming in market, which can reduce the number of pricks. So 300, if you are using 300 unit, it can reduce the number of pricks. See Degludec, more than 42 hours, and Peglispro, 36 hours. So these are the longest acting insulins. And as the unit per ml becomes more, the preparations are such so the action becomes longer. So try to use those, but only disadvantage, they are costly. The cost factors becomes main inhibition in treatment of diabetes mellitus with insulin. So these are nutritional insulin, or we call mealtime insulin, or we call postprandial insulins or prandial insulin. So these are the maximum duration of action. So you can see an S part, duration of action is short. So less chance of hypoglycemia. Longer the duration, the chances of hypoglycemia will be more, because after 4 to 6 hours, the person is not having any meal, still action is continuous, person can go into hypoglycemia. So there are certain factors which will have effect on absorption, like site. If it is taken on abdomen, buttocks, thigh, or dorsum of the arm, the action will be different. It will depend upon the type of insulin. It will depend upon the subcutaneous blood flow, like massage, hot water bath, exercise, etc. All this will increase the absorption. Smoking will also have an effect on absorption. Muscular exercise, regional muscular exercise at the site of injection. Say after taking an injection in the arm and person is doing an exercise with the arm, so absorption will be faster. It will depend upon the volume and concentration of injected insulin and depth of injection also. If it is given intramuscular, injection will have a different action. So it will depend upon whether it is subcutaneous or it has gone intramuscular. So all these factors will have an effect. There are lot of different ways and means by which you can give an insulin. Most commonly, illiterate people, or we call as an uneducated person, poor person, they usually utilize insulin syringe, which is 40 unit per ml or 100 unit per ml. Depending upon the bulb what you are using, you will have to use that particular syringe. If you are using 100 unit per ml bulb, you will have to use this syringe. If it is 40 unit per ml, you will have to use a syringe marked with 40 unit per ml. You can use an insulin pumps. There are implantable insulin pumps. There are insulin pens which are available. Jet injectors are available. Inhalers are available. They have tried oral insulin. Patches are available. Ocular drops they are trying. Continuous subcutaneous insulin infusions are available. Artificial pancreas is available. There is also a bionic pancreas which is available, which is having glucagon as well as insulin in two separate chambers. All these are different ways and means of giving insulin. And in near future, you might have some other ways and means of insulin delivery. So these are all the different types of insulin delivery devices. And they are available in a pre-filled disposable pens, use and throw away pens. And there are reusable, where you can insert cartridge, and whenever the cartridge is empty, you can use another cartridge and you can reuse the pen. These are different types of pen, reusable pen, and these are pre-filled pens. Once that pen is empty, you have to throw away that. These were the pumps which was first pump devised, and now you can see the size of the pump. These are small size pump now. This will fit in your palm. These are smallest size pump which are available now. Now we go to what we call as the indication, contraindication. Now main part of your insulin therapy. So indication of insulin, continuous use for lifetime, type 1 diabetes 100%. There is no other alternative for that. You have to use insulin, insulin and insulin lifetime. So it is called lifetime. In type 2, once the person gets an OHA failure, whether it is a primary failure or secondary failure, now insulin is a must. So it is a life saving in type 1 and it becomes essential in type 2. Why? It can be used for a short period and you can come back to oral hypoglycemic agent in type 2. If person is on a major surgery during pregnancy or during labor or during delivery, during acute myocardial infarction, you change over to insulin, and then after everything is settled down, you can go back to oral hypoglycemic agent, acute infection, hyperglycemic emergencies, sorry, that is a spelling mistake, DKA, hyperosmolar coma, in GDM, etc. In all these conditions, you can use for a intermediate use. Type 1, already we have mentioned, it is a lifelong or we call long-term use. In case of LADA also, almost it is nearly lifetime. In fulminant pancreatitis, it is a long-term use. Invariably, person develops later on type 1 variety or we call it insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. If a person has got CA pancreas and has undergone a pancreectomy, almost a total pancreectomy, the person will need lifetime insulin. End stage renal disease or stage 4 and 5, CKD, insulin is a must. End stage liver disease, insulin is a must. These are apart from type 1 and LADA. Do remember, in all these conditions also, you need long-term or lifelong insulins. In type 2 variety, OHA failure, you will need a lifelong, almost you need a lifelong. And as far as lifelong is concerned, either you give a basal or you give a basal plus 3 times bolus. So we call basal plus bolus. So it is called basal bolus. So you use pure basal or you give basal plus bolus. So it is called basal bolus. Or you use basal plus oral hypoglycemic agent. So these are the different, but usually in type 1, bolus are better than what we call as basal bolus is better than other types of treatment in type 1 variety. Short-term treatment is usually indicated in a person with acute illness, infection, surgery, in an ICU, we call critical illness, during pregnancy, with type 2 diabetes mellitus, GDM, during breastfeeding. Initial therapy of type 2 diabetes, if a person has got very severe hyperglycemia and your HbA1c is more than 10, more than 9 to 10, there is a OHA failure, diabetic ketoacidosis, lactic acid acidosis, HONC, hyperosmolar, non-ketotic coma, acute myocardial infarction, cerebrovascular stroke, post-CABG, gangrene, severe peripheral arterial disease. All these are the main indications. Non-healing ulcer, recurrent infections, severe infection, sepsis, critical illness, emergency surgery. In this, by and large, short-acting insulin or basal bolus is preferred. These are all what we have mentioned before in previous slide. In all this is the indications. These are type 2 with all these conditions. So these are type 2 with all these conditions. You will need insulin. So I am skipping these particular slides. Why you need insulin? We want to achieve a glycemic target. When insulin is needed, earlier the better. Insulin therapy is effective? Yes, definitely insulin therapy is the best effective along with lifestyle modification, exercise. Is insulin therapy safe? Absolutely safe. If proper insulin, proper regime is selected and all the precautions are taken. Weight gain, hypoglycemia? Yes. If you use insulin analogs, chance of weight gain and hypoglycemia are minimum. As well as they also help in reducing glycemic variability. And cancer chances are very, very minimum. So this is the advantage of insulin analogs. What are the non-diabetic conditions where insulin is indicated? For weight gain? Absolutely no. It should not be used for weight gain. In psychiatric disease, to produce hypoglycemic convulsions in psychiatric disorders like schizophrenia, nowadays this is almost outdated. In hyperkalemia, it is still one of the mode of treatment. Insulin plus dextrose plus B complex. In a hyperkalemia, slowly the potassium will move into intracellular compartment and potassium level will come down. This is one of the treatment which can be utilized in non-diabetic person also with hyperkalemia. Yes, it is one of the treatment in a non-diabetic person or even in a diabetic person. For homicide, definitely should not be done. Suicide also, it should not be done. And usually, for this particular purpose, we call as a psychiatric disease, and in case of hyperkalemia, short-acting insulin should be utilized, and it is given in the form of what we call as a IV drip. Absolute contraindication, severe hypoglycemia, insulin allergy and hypokalemia. This becomes the three main contraindication for not using insulin. Hypoglycemia, insulin allergy and hypokalemia. Lipodystrophy is not actually a contraindication, but you will have to change the site of insulin. If a person is gaining weight which is very, very excessive, yes, it will become a contraindication. But main contraindication, hypoglycemia, insulin allergy and hypokalemia. These two are, we can call relative contraindication depending upon the person. But while starting an insulin therapy, there are a lot of barriers. Patient always runs away as soon as you say that you have to start an insulin therapy. Ideally, you will require a specialist, so a person should have a good knowledge of selection of insulin, how to give, when to give, how to titrate, what combination you give, etc. Dose titration becomes difficult and person has to come repeatedly. When you use insulin, there is always a chance of hypoglycemia, and once the person gets hypoglycemia, he will avoid insulin therapy. Compliance is always less because if more than 1 or 2 pricks comes, compliance will become less. Usually in a serious illness, person will be agreeable, but later on person will always deny. Person has to have a daily injection. There are no preparations which are available which you can give once in a month or once in a week. In near future, we might have some injection available which can be weekly or monthly. Near future, let us hope so. And most important part which comes is a cost factor. So these are all the barriers which are there for insulin therapy. These are barrier by patient. The two most common barrier, one is a cost factor. Second is person feels that now his life is going to end. And then it is added by hypoglycemia, fear of injections and insulin complications. So these are some of the things which will be adding to a patient, and patient will run away from insulin therapy. While at the level of clinician, the most common is inertia, because the clinician is afraid that person will run away, so he does not advise the person to take an insulin. And to avoid hypoglycemia, he will use suboptimal doses. So even after using insulin, still diabetes is not under control. and clinician is also afraid of getting hypoglycemic episode, and person will say that I'm gaining weight. That is also one of the drawback in the mind of clinician to avoid insulin. Now we go to what we call as a selection of different regimes. Now again, first word, there is no one size fits all. So there is no fixed regime which is for all person. It is depending upon the individual. It will depend upon the age, it will depend upon the sex, pregnancy, kidney disorders, CKD, liver disease, eating habits, food what they are taking, uh, fasting person, etc. There are a lot of factors which we'll be having one slide which will show you lot of factors which will change your insulin dose, timings, etc. So this regime does not remain common for all people. So blood sugar and HbA1c is tools which is available, but still it does not decide what regime you will use. So it needs of many changes during a status what you are using, and in a current regime whether that is working on that person or not also you will have to decide. So I'll show you only early insulin therapy is beneficial because it will reduce the beta cell exhaustion. First, always try to control the fasting level, because if you control fasting level, automatically postprandial will come down. Then you target postprandial. Depending upon the post breakfast, post lunch and post dinner, you will decide whether you want to use pre-mix insulin or you want to use short acting insulins. We call as a bolus preparation, as bolus. Target fasting close to 100, postprandial between 140 to 160, random should not be more than 140, and HbA1c should be close to 6. But at the same time, while targeting this, person should not go into hypoglycemia and person should not have a weight gain. These are the two major drawbacks of insulin therapy. So for that person, first you have to prepare a person, explain the person, give a proper education, discuss regarding insulin therapy, how it is going to help, initiate the therapy, titrate, and then once the titration and you have you have decided the goal, person has targets and have achieved the targets, now you have to maintain that particular by monitoring. So these are all the things which should be done in the same person. So first thing a person requires is a basal amount of insulin, which is usually based by long acting insulin, or we call the basal analogs. So basal analog will provide a basal level of insulin, and it will also help you to reduce fasting sugar. Once the fasting is controlled, you will have to add insulin for nutritional purpose. So whenever you take a breakfast, lunch and dinner, so that should be controlled by either by oral hypoglycemic agent, we call as a plus basal plus therapy, or by using a short acting insulin, we call basal bolus. So depending upon what type of curve you are getting, accordingly you will decide. And total addition of basal plus nutritional requirement plus correction, you call total daily requirements. So you can just see here, this is normal fasting blood glucose, this is elevated fasting, this is postprandial. As soon as you give a basal insulin, so basal insulin will correct that, you will get a normal fasting blood glucose now in your body. So fasting, as soon as it comes to a normal level, now you can see the postprandial has come back. I'll show you the slide again. This is a fasting hyperglycemia as elevated fasting level, as well as because of that along with the meal, the postprandial has also got elevated. As soon as you give a basal insulin, fasting will come to normal. You have to control first fasting. So as soon as the fasting comes normal, postprandial will also come to a lower level. And now you decide regarding whether post breakfast is high, post lunch, post dinner is high. Depending upon that, you will decide a short acting insulin here, 3 pricks, or a premix, 1 prick or 2 pricks, depending upon that. So first is lifestyle modification with metformin. If not under control with 2 drugs or 3 drugs, we call oral hypoglycemic failure. You will add a basal insulin. If not controlled, we call basal plus, or we call basal supported oral therapy. Means you give basal plus, still you continue with the oral therapy. Or you give basal plus 1 dose of bolus. And if you give all throughout 3 injections of bolus, then we call basal bolus therapy before each meal. So there are different regimes. We'll be going one by one. Pure basal, you give only at bedtime, or you give early morning, whichever time is suitable to the person, and it is single prick. And by this, if fasting and postprandial all are controlled, you need only basal. Or you can combine basal with oral hypoglycemic agents. We call basal plus. And if basal is given with 1 prick of rapid, it is also called as basal plus. But when you give 3 pricks, I'll show you that basal plus 1 prick of premix, it is also basal plus. And when more than 2 are given, more than 1, you give 2 pricks or 3 pricks, it is called basal bolus. Rapid, you can use 3 pricks, it is basal bolus. So basal, basal plus, and if you are using oral, it is called as basal oral therapy. Basal plus oral therapy. And when you use rapid acting insulin or premix, basal plus. When more than 2 pricks of premix or more than 2 pricks of rapid or up to 3 pricks, it is basal bolus. Now, also you can use premix, 1 prick, 2 prick or 3 pricks. Or you can use rapid, 3 pricks without any basal, without any basal. Or you can use infusion during acute management of diabetic ketoacidosis, hyperosmolar coma, or in a critically ill patient, we call insulin infusions. Or you can use continuous subcutaneous insulin pump or insulin infusion, or you can use bionic pumps, or you can use insulin patch, or oral elazor, or Afrezza, that is inhalers. Any one of these can be utilized. Now with degludec, because it is acting for more than 42 hours, here ideally if I talk about basal insulin, we always say it has to be given at a fixed time. So if you are taking at 9 p.m. every day at 9 p.m. But in a degludec, you can fluctuate that. We call flexible dosing time. So if suppose a person forgets, or if a person wants to have a timings, here say it is a 40 hours times, here it becomes 8-hour times. So this can be done in case of a degludec. So this is only possible in degludec. We call flexible dosing time. At the same time, if the person wants to fluctuate the timings during evening only, this also can be done day-to-day dosing time. Say on Monday you are taking at say 10, on Tuesday you are taking at 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. On Wednesday also you are taking at this particular day. On Thursday you are gone to a movie, you are taking at 10, and this day-to-day fluctuation time can be also done. This is fixed timings. This is fixed timings. This is fluctuating timings. Can be done with degludec because the action is more than 42 hours. These are the pump where you don't require any fluctuation. Continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion, artificial pancreas, bionic pancreas, you don't require any particular, or we call insulin patch. You don't require any fluctuations. You don't require any timings because they will release at their own time, because they are having insulin sensor, and that can produce a release of insulin at a different timings depending upon the glucose level. These are what we call as a combination therapy, in which you got liraglutide with degludec or lixisenide with glargine. Now these are usually given once in a day most commonly in India we give it at a breakfast or you give it at pre-dinner. So usually by and large it is given before the meal, once a day at any time about the same time of the day, before a large meal, and it has to be given, this particular combination has to be given 1 hour before a large meal. So whichever is a large meal you give before that. This can be given just before a meal and once in a day only. So this is your helpful if a person is having only one prandial blood sugar high, then it can be utilized. And it is a combination of a short acting insulin with a long acting insulin. Sorry. This is GLP analogs, GLP-1 receptor agonist, liraglutide or lixisenate with degludec or glargine. While Rhizodec is a combination of short acting insulin with basal insulin, that is degludec. So that will be very helpful in a person who is having one postprandial being high. Now how you calculate the dose? While calculating the dose, there are a lot of factors. One, action of the insulin, whether it is short acting, intermediate acting, long acting, it is a premix preparation, etc. Or it is a basal insulin, etc. Which route you are giving? You are giving IV, subcutaneous, oral, nasal, because in oral, in nasal and in inhalers or transdermal, very difficult to predict the absorption. While in a subcutaneous also, while giving subcutaneous, by chance you give it intramuscular, again absorption will be erratic. In IV, by and large rapid acting is utilized and hence it will have a sustained action. So depending upon the administration, the action will change. Site, yes, best if it is given over abdomen because that is a big area. So abdomen is better than thigh, thigh is better than arm. So if it is taken on arm, the action will be different. If it is taken on thigh, the action will be different. And if it is taken on abdomen, the action will be different. By and large, it should be rotated in a same area. So go on rotating to reduce lipodystrophy and atrophy. Obesity, lipodystrophy and atrophy will change the insulin action. So in a person with severe obesity, lipodystrophy or lipoatrophy, there will be erratic absorption. At what time you are administering? Suppose if the person is having a heavy meal at dinner and you are giving a short acting insulin early morning, it is useless. So you have to decide when person is taking a heavy meal, when a person is taking a light meal, etc. And depending upon that, you will decide regarding administrations. Type of food. Some people are having a habit of taking a food which is having a very high glycemic index. In those particular group of people, the sugar level will shoot up very high. So depending upon the type of foods, habits, frequency, some person is having a very frequent intake of foods. Some person is having only one meal at a time in a day, heavy dinner only. Breakfast and lunch they usually skip. So you have to decide all these things. Insulin doses, how you are deciding a total dose, how you are dividing those total dose. And type of insulin, you are using a basal, you are using a bolus, or you are using a regular insulins, analogs or what. You are using which pen, 40 unit pen, 100 unit pen, all those. And these are all the factors which will decide. So obesity, type 2 diabetes, BMI high, one restriction. Type 1, 100% you have to give every day, irrespective of the meal, irrespective of all the other factors. You will have to give timings of the meal, number of meals, glycemic index of food, duration of diabetes. Longer the duration, the benefit of insulin will be relatively less. Quality of meal, metabolic memory, glycemic variations. Different guidelines are there. Which guidelines you are following? but you should decide depending on the type of patient and depending on all these factors. You should utilize the guidelines. So age, weight, liver, kidney functions, diabetic ketoacidosis, honk, hypoglycemia, etc. becomes the factors. So insulin is the only treatment for all diabetes mellitus. Insulin treatment has to be individualized depending upon the individual factors. Early insulin therapy is always beneficial. Also, acute MI, surgery, macro and microvascular complication will change the insulin therapy. So, responsibilities are there during insulin administration. You should know what you are giving, give at right time, assess the individual regarding eating habits, what meal is taking, when you should give the insulin, etc. And try to avoid hypoglycemia as much as possible. And person should be aware of what is hypoglycemia, how to tackle that hypoglycemia. Now these are for basal insulin, how you use. In a 60 kg person with 8 A1C, you will use 0.2 unit per kilogram, so it will come approximately to 12 units. But if it is HbA1c is more than 9, then you will have to give 0.3 units per kg per day, that is 18 units. So this is what we call as a starting dose. In 80 kg, 16 unit if it is 8, and 9 HbA1c 24 units. And if it is 100 kg, you can see the dose will go to 30 units. Here 60 kg is 18, here it is 30 units. So depending upon the weight, the dose can increase. But if you calculate the total dose will be showing you next slide. So individual society gives you a separate dose. See, initial dose, all these are 10, but Indian Diabetic Federation, no specified. Then you titrate every 2 to 3 units, every 3 or 4 days. And then fasting glucose is titrated and HbA1c is titrated. So if HbA1c here is up to 7, less than 7, here less than 6.5. So you have to decide depending upon the individual patients. But if you calculate the total dose, daily dose, body weight divided by 2, base weight. So if a person is 80 kg, 40 units in a day, according to the initiating dose, if 8 HbA1c and person is weighing 8 kg, 80 kg, then you will give the dose according to this, that is 16 unit if it is 8, and if it is HbA1c 9, 24 units. But total dose if you calculate in a day, it will be coming to 40 units in a day, and this 40 units you will have to divide depending upon what regime you are using. So if you are using basal bolus, 40% of this requirement, see here it is calculated on 60. If person is weighing 60 kg, you will have to give 30 units. Of that 30 units, 40% is 12 units. 12 units you will give in the form of what we call as a basal. And rest of 18 units, you will divide into 3 separate doses. That is short acting insulin, that is bolus, breakfast, lunch and dinner. A simple most way to calculate. So we say that 20%, 20%, 20% breakfast, lunch and dinner, so which makes 60%, and 40% at bedtime. So 60-40 we use a word, 60-40. 60% in a 3 divided doses, breakfast, lunch and dinner, and 40% at bedtime, that is we call as a basal insulin. If you are using a pre-mixed insulin, same thing, you will have to decide what type. First we calculate the dose, that is say 60 kg, 30 units. Now divide this into 3 equal parts, 10, 10, 10. Either this is one way, so you give 10 units at breakfast, 10 units at lunch, 10 units at dinner. Or you divide into 2. You divide into 2. Morning, 2 parts in the morning and 1 part in the evening. So morning you give 20 units and in evening you give 10 units. But remember, whenever you give a premix insulin, it has to be given minimum half an hour before starting a meal. So don't give it after meal. Don't give it after meal. Basal insulin, that is degludec, datimer or lantus, can be given at any time of the day but fixed time. Short acting insulin has to be given just before meal. We say 5 or 10 minutes before meal, or it can be given if even at the meal, or even if the person forgets, it can be given immediately after the meal. So now golden rules wise, total dose 1 unit per kilogram per day for type 1 and divide that into equal doses. 20 units, 20 unit, 20 units into the 3 divided doses, that is we call 60-40 combination, 40 unit at basal. This is for type 1. For type 2, 0.5 unit per kilogram per day. So 60-40 again, 40 at basal, 20-20-20, 3 divided pre-breakfast, pre-lunch, pre-dinner. If you use a pre-mix insulin, 0.3 unit per kilogram per day and divide into 2/3 at breakfast, 1/3 at dinner. So two dose at breakfast, 1 dose at dinner. For all slow, for all people, always start slow. Rise by 4 to 5 units after 4 to 7 days, or increase 2 to 3 units every 3 or 4 days. 10 units of basal or NPH is given at dinner and 5 units of bolus is given at breakfast or lunch. Or you can use 0.8 unit per kilogram per day of mixed insulin and divide into 2/3 and 1/3 depending upon what you are using. The most common what is being utilized is this for type 2. 40-60 combination is this is the most common which is utilized, and this is for type 1. So this is 1 and 2 are the best, but if you want to decrease the number of pricks, then you can use this particular formula. But chances of hypoglycemia is very high in this type of regime. So usually this is the common regime which is being utilized. Calculate the total number of dose in type 1, type 2 varieties, mild, moderate and severe variety, aggressive, basal insulin, divide into half, prandial insulin, how you divide, correct the scale, etc. We have already discussed before. So I am skipping over this particular slide. This is in type 1, rapid acting insulin at each meal, long acting insulin at dinner time, so 2/3, 1/3 we call. Base is bolus at meal and basal at bedtime. In diabetic ketoacidosis, always give IV fluid with rapid acting insulin, soda bicarb, and always keep a watch on potassium, because while giving an insulin treatment, potassium will be shifted from extracellular into intracellular compartment and person will develop hypokalemia. So try to remember regarding that, and whenever you give an insulin drip, do keep it in mind regarding a hypokalemia. During surgery, person is nil by mouth, so use dextrose normal saline, or you can use Ringal lactate, or you can use Fructodex. And for a person if he is a non-diabetic, for 25 gram of glucose or dextrose, 10 to 12 units of rapid acting insulin is given. And in a case of a diabetic person or a non-diabetic person, depending upon the blood sugar level, you should titrate that by adding an extra dose of rapid acting insulin. And that is what is done in a surgical person during surgery or post-surgical therapy. Type 2 diabetes mellitus, oral hypoglycemic agent is used, mono, 2, 3 drugs, 4 drugs, and as soon as there is a OHA failure, add basal insulin. So if basal insulin is added over a oral hypoglycemic agent, we call as a oral hypoglycemic agent with basal. So it is called basal oral therapy, BOT. And when that does not work, now you add bolus at the time of meals, we call basal bolus. In diabetic ketoacidosis, we have already discussed before, In surgery also same thing. Whatever you do in type 1, same thing you do in type 2. During CKD, if GFR is more than 50, no dose adjustment required. If GFR falls below 75%, below 10, then the dose has to be 50% of the baseline, and use 75% of the baseline insulin if GFR is between 10 to 50. Means reduce the dose to 75%. Say if a person is taking 10 units, reduce it to 7 or 8 units. If he is taking 20 units, go to 15 units. And if GFR is less than 10, then go to half the dose. This is classical. So usually they say that if person is taking 40 units, if GFR is 30, reduce it to 30 units. And if GFR is less than 10, reduce it to half. So this is what is done in a CKD. During pregnancy, usually 0.6 unit per kilogram per day, pre-pregnancy period. First trimester 0.7, second trimester 0.8, third trimester 0.9, and then at the time of delivery 1 unit per kilogram per day. So this is what is called as a starting dose, and then you need a titration. By and large, almost we say that all insulin, most of the insulin are falling in category B, means they are relatively safe. Glargine and glulisin are in category C. So these two insulin are usually avoided. Now they say that even these are safe during pregnancy. So any insulin you can use during pregnancy, but by and large, best is short-acting insulin and basal insulin. You can use that combination. During what we call as Rhizodec utilization, during Ramadan, you have to decide regarding the timings, whether it is iftar or sahur, depending upon what dose you give, what meal he is taking, how much meal he is taking, what is the glycemic index, etc. You have to decide that and give accordingly. By and large, you should use short-acting insulin rather than long-acting insulin. While using insulin, you should remember regarding the two phenomena we call dawn phenomena and Somogyi phenomena. In a dawn phenomena, person is having normal pre-dinner, post-dinner glucose level, and during early morning, that is 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., because of excess of growth hormone production, there is a hyperglycemia in dawn. While in case of a Somogyi effect, person in a post-dinner, he starts getting hypoglycemic episodes. So because of this hypoglycemia, there is an rebound, what we call as secretion of stress hormones, and that will produce Somogyi phenomena. And because of Somogyi phenomena, you will have a early morning hyperglycemia because of a secretion of lot of different hormones like glucagon, cortisol, growth hormone, adrenaline, etc. And that will produce early morning hyperglycemia. And if you do a blood sugar at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., there will be hypoglycemia, while in a dawn phenomena, the person will have a normal sugar level. But because of an increased secretion of a growth hormone, nocturnal secretion, early morning hyperglycemia is there. Don't increase the dose of insulin. You have to just shift the dose of insulin and give it 2 hours after dinner. So shift from pre-dinner to 2 hours after dinner at bedtime. So that will suffice this dawn phenomena. While in case of a Somogyi effect, you will have to reduce the dose of insulin and Somogyi effect will be corrected. So for Somogyi effect, you will have to reduce the dose of nighttime insulin. You will have to check the blood sugar at 3 a.m., which will show you hypoglycemia, and you will have an early morning hyperglycemia, fasting hyperglycemia. While in a dawn phenomena, you will see that growth hormone level is elevated, fasting hyperglycemia is there, and if you do glucose level at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., the blood sugar level will be normal. And person may need to increase the dose of nighttime insulin or shift the timing. So give a long acting insulin not before 11 p.m. So give a insulin as much late as possible. They say that give after 2 hours of dinner. So that will reduce your dawn phenomena. Now how to give, when to give, this I don't have to go into detail, you know very well. How to preserve the insulin, you should be aware of it. So these are the route of administration we already done before. What are the different modes of administration? I'll just show you 2 or 3 slides. When you don't lift the skin folds, chances of insulin going into intramuscular is high. So you have to lift the fold. And when you give insulin, this goes exactly into the subcutaneous tissue. But while lifting the fold, this should be the method, and then give the insulin. But this is a wrong technique, because if you lift the fold like this and give the insulin, it will go into the muscle, it will be intramuscular injections. When you use a needle, use a new needle. Don't use a reused needle which is having a deformed peak of this needle. It will produce trauma and bleeding, and skin will be damaged. These are all the different sites. It has to be given subcutaneous only. And whenever you give an insulin, see that the insulin proper dose is given. These are all the technique what you should follow. Wash your hand, roll the bottle, then apply the antiseptic solution on the top of the, allow it to dry, then invert the bottle, take the calculated amount of insulin and remove the air bubble if it is there. See that the proper dose is taken, and then only inject properly. And if a person is having lipodystrophy or atrophy, person will have an erratic response. So never inject at lipodystrophy or atrophic area, and this will disturb your glucose level and will produce lot amount of glucose variability. So do keep it in mind. What should be our goal? We have discussed this during a management of diabetes mellitus, that blood pressure should be controlled, LDL level should be controlled, HbA1 should be controlled, avoid tobacco or smoking, what we call tobacco, alcohol, etc. And aspirin should be given. All this has to be together in a diabetic control. So they call 5 goals. Reduction of an HbA1c by 1% will reduce all this. You can see that it will reduce amputation, it will reduce microvascular complication, cataract extraction, heart failure, myocardial infarction, stroke, etc. is reduced remarkably. Hence, a 1% reduction of HbA1c will reduce even the death rates up to 21%. So it is a marked reduction. And if you control it well, well and good. These are all the different society which gives you a different figures for a goal. You can utilize whichever you are following, whichever guidelines you are following. This is during pregnancy. The goal are little rigid, but take care that person do not get hypoglycemic episodes. So I am skipping this particular slide. This I have already told you. Now instead of glycemic triad, they say glycemic composites. Fasting control, postprandial control with HbA1c control, and this should be also targeted along with less number of hypoglycemia, less weight gain, better quality of life, and less glycemic variability. This all 6 things should be targeted together so that you get the best diabetic control. And this can be achieved by doing what we call as a monitoring. And that monitoring is for fasting, postprandial, and HbA1c, which can be self-monitoring. You can do self-monitoring, and in self-monitoring, fasting, pre-breakfast, pre-lunch, post-lunch, pre-dinner, post-dinner, and midnight sample. Extremely difficult. These are almost we can call as 7 sample. No one will follow that, but these are necessary, which can be done very easily by we call CGMS, continuous glucose monitoring system. Now this is easily available, but little cost factor is always there. So whoever is affording, you can utilize. You can also use glucose watch. So glucose watch are also available. So ambulatory glucose profile you should utilize for management of diabetes. So they say that testing frequency in a stable type 2, 1 or 2 reading per day. In type 1 and unstable type 2, 3 to 8 readings per day, extremely difficult. And during stress, depending upon what type of stress, critically ill patient, etc., you can go on repeating those particular tests. Side effect of insulin, most common, hypoglycemia, second common, weight gain, lipodystrophy, atrophy, allergic reactions, and hypokalemia. These are the common. And because of hypoglycemia, you will get tachycardia, confusion, diaphoresis, vertigo, and you can have even what we call is a lipodystrophy and hypersensitivity. So these are the common side effects what you can come across. Hypoglycemia, weight gain, lipodystrophy, lipoatrophy, local allergy, hypokalemia, and insulin resistance. You can develop all these complications. So common side effects which we have already narrated. I am showing you some of the slide. This is lipoatrophy. This is lipoatrophy. You can see the atrophy, scarring, atrophy at the injection sites. This is dystrophy or hypertrophy. Dystrophy or hypertrophy. Both are dangerous. You can have hypertrophy or atrophy. This is atrophy. This is lump formation. So lipid tissue has hypertrophy. Don't try to inject at that site. Local allergy, infusion site reactions at the site of the pricks, hyperpigmentations. The tape which is applied, you can get a tape reactions also. This is lipodystrophies. Or you can also get necrosis, necrobiosis, lipodica. So these are all the different types of adverse reaction, including even we call it a chronic resistance or insulin resistance can also develop because of formation of a insulin antibody. There is something called as an insulin shock because of a low blood sugar level can be there. Overdoses of exogenous insulin, eating habits, eating less, and over exertion can be also additional factors, can produce severe hypoglycemia. This is hypoglycemia, I will be discussing separately. These are all the complications which can happen because of hypoglycemia, including weight gains, loss of consciousness, seizures, dementia, reduced quality of life, car accidents, person can even die, person can be unconscious and can go into coma. Cost factor will be increased because he will require hospitalization and he can have a cardiovascular complications. And these are the things what should be done during hypoglycemia. I'll be skipping over that. You can read it at your leisure time. So I'll keep this. Guidelines are always there to confuse because these are always confused and they confuse you. Guidelines are only for guidance, not for confusions. Always confused. So what is the take home message? One size does not fit all. So replace complete lack of insulin type 1 diabetes mellitus. Supplement progressive deficiency in type 2. Basal insulin should be added to oral agents to start with and then you can go for a basal bolus for full replacement. This should be the ideal. Hypoglycemia and weight gain should be checked at regular interval while using insulin, and you should also look for all other complications like lipodystrophy, atrophy, hypertrophy, necrosis. All those things should be looked for. Even insulin allergy. Newer insulin analogs and newer devices should be utilized to benefit the person. So that's why it is said that it should be depending upon the individual person. So one size does not fit all. So try to have a look at this. I end my lecture here. I think this will be very helpful to you. If you have got any problem, you can contact me and you can ask me regarding insulin therapy.